The moment you stop replying, something invisible changes. Not in your world, but in hers. And this is where most men completely misunderstand what silence actually does. You think silence is just absence of communication. But psychologically, it is something much deeper. It creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is the one emotion the human mind cannot ignore. Especially the female mind, which is naturally tuned to emotional patterns, attention signals, and consistency. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Later you'll understand why her mind doesn't feel peace in your silence, it feels disturbance. And that disturbance slowly turns into curiosity she cannot control. At first, she doesn't react. That's important to understand. Because silence doesn't create immediate emotional chaos, it creates analysis. She starts replaying your last messages, your last tone, your last behavior. Imagine this, a woman sitting alone, scrolling her phone, not because she misses you yet, but because she is trying to decode what changed. Most men think she is ignoring them too. But the truth is the opposite. Her mind is now more active than when you were constantly available. And here's the twist, she will never admit this phase is happening. Not even to herself. But here's where it gets psychologically interesting. Silence removes emotional certainty. And when certainty disappears, attraction dynamics shift. A man who was predictable becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability triggers mental looping. She begins to ask questions she never asked before. Is he busy? Did I do something wrong? Or is he losing interest? These questions are not emotional yet, they are cognitive. But cognitive questions always evolve into emotional discomfort. And slowly, without her realizing it, your absence becomes a mental presence. That's the paradox of silence. You are not there, yet you are everywhere in her thoughts. Now here's what most people never realize. Emotional attachment is not built by presence alone. It is built by contrast. When you were constantly available, your value was stable in her mind. But stability does not create obsession. Variation does. So when you suddenly withdraw, her emotional system recalibrates. She doesn't chase you immediately, but she starts monitoring your absence. Checking your activity, overthinking your silence. And this is the first real shift. She is no longer reacting to your words, she is reacting to your lack of them. And the real emotional spiral, that hasn't even started yet. Stop. Now something subtle begins to happen. She starts remembering the emotional highs, not the routine moments, but the specific feelings you gave her. The late night conversations, the attention, the way you used to respond quickly. And now, in contrast, your silence feels louder than your presence ever did. Think about it, the human brain always compares current emotional states with past emotional states. So your absence is not neutral, it is measured against your previous attention. And here's the strange part, the more she tries to ignore it, the more her mind brings it back. At this stage, most men assume she is losing interest. But psychologically, something different is happening. She is entering internal conflict. One part of her says, don't think about it. The other part keeps checking for signals. This is where emotional control begins to break down quietly. Not dramatically, but internally. And here's the twist most people miss. Silence does not push her away immediately. It pulls her inward first. Into her own thoughts. Into analysis. Into emotional replay. And the deeper she goes into that mental loop, the harder it becomes to stay emotionally neutral. Now imagine this scenario. She opens your chat again. Not to text you, but to study you. Your last message suddenly feels different. Your tone feels different. Even your emojis feel meaningful. This is called retrospective emotional interpretation. The mind rewrites past interactions based on present emotions. So your silence is now changing your history in her mind. What once felt ordinary now feels significant. And here's the psychological twist. She is not reacting to what you did then. She is reacting to what your absence is making her feel now. That's where emotional distortion begins. But here's the part that changes everything. Silence also triggers ego response. She may not miss you yet, but she feels the loss of attention. And attention is emotional currency. When that currency stops flowing, the brain registers imbalance. So she starts seeking subtle validation elsewhere: social media, conversations, distractions. But none of it replaces the specific emotional space you occupied. And this creates frustration. Not loud frustration, quiet frustration. The kind that builds in the background while she acts completely normal on the outside. And the truth is, this is where emotional attachment starts turning into psychological dependency. Stop. Now the silence has moved beyond curiosity. It becomes a pattern in her mind. She notices time. It's been hours, it's been a day, why still nothing? And this is where emotional imagination begins to take over logic. She starts constructing possible scenarios, each one slightly more emotional than the last. Not because she is overthinking for no reason, but because the brain hates unresolved gaps. Think about it. You didn't just disappear from her phone. You disappeared from her emotional rhythm. And that disruption forces her mind to fill in the missing pieces, whether they are real or not. Here's where most men completely misread the situation. They think silence only works if she cares enough. But the truth is deeper. Silence doesn't require care at the start. It creates care through uncertainty. And uncertainty slowly builds emotional investment. So even a woman who seemed unbothered starts checking subtle signals: last seen, activity, mutual interactions. Not because she wants to chase you, but because her mind is trying to regain control of something it no longer understands. And the moment she loses control internally, emotional curiosity becomes unavoidable. But here's the psychological twist most people never notice: silence doesn't just affect her thoughts about you. It affects her perception of herself. She starts asking unconscious questions like, why do I care? Or, why is this bothering me? And that internal confusion creates emotional tension. Because now it's not just about you, it's about her reaction to you. And when someone becomes aware of their own emotional reaction, they feel even more emotionally involved. This is where silence becomes powerful in a way words never could. It doesn't speak to her, it speaks through her mind. At this stage, emotional imagination becomes stronger than reality. She might even start remembering small moments that never felt important before. A simple laugh, a short compliment, a random conversation. And now those moments feel amplified. The brain does this naturally. It enhances emotional memory when current stimulation is missing. So your silence is not empty, it is actively reshaping how she remembers you. And here's the deeper truth: she is not missing you as a person yet. She is missing the emotional pattern you created inside her system. Stop. Now something more intense begins to form. She starts checking her own emotions more frequently. Not just thinking about you, but observing how often she thinks about you. And this is where silence becomes psychologically invasive. Because attention turns inward. She might look calm on the outside, but internally she is tracking her own reactions. Why did I just check my phone? Why did I expect a message? And here's the twist: the more she monitors her own thoughts, the stronger those thoughts become. You are no longer just in her mind, you are in her self-awareness loop. At this point, a subtle shift happens in behavior. She may not reach out directly, but she begins indirect signaling. Posting more, appearing more active, or engaging in visible spaces where she knows she can be seen. But this is not confidence, it's emotional regulation. She is trying to stabilize the imbalance your silence created. And here's what most men misunderstand: these actions are not random. They are responses, silent responses. And beneath all of it is a single emotional need: to regain the attention that suddenly disappeared without explanation. But now comes the real realization: silence has stopped being about you and started becoming about her internal emotional state. She is no longer just reacting to your absence. She is reacting to the discomfort that absence created inside her. And this is where emotional dependency can begin forming without her conscious awareness. Not because she is weak, but because the human brain resists unresolved emotional patterns. And when resolution doesn't come externally, the mind starts creating internal meaning. And that meaning often revolves around the person who triggered the silence in the first place. And finally, here is the truth most men never understand: silence is not a tactic. It is a mirror. It reflects emotional reality back to the person experiencing it. Sometimes it creates attraction. Sometimes it creates distance. But always, it reveals what was already there underneath the surface. If she was emotionally invested, silence will amplify that investment. If she was not, silence will reveal that too. And the real power is not in making her think about you, but in understanding what her reaction says about emotional dynamics itself. Because in the end, the mind doesn't chase silence, it chases meaning.